Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy today. I've got more than 10 must-add players for you heading into Week 7 of the fantasy football season. Tons of running backs. If your team is anything like my fantasy teams are, the running back position has been a real struggle so far. So I got a lot of guys here that you can potentially add that have some upside this week, have some upside moving forward, and then have some wide receivers and a tight end as well. If you guys enjoyed today's video, I'd really appreciate if you hit that like button for me. Subscribe to the channel if you're looking for more fantasy football content to help you win your leagues this season. We've got stuff posted every single day here on the channel, so definitely hit that sub button if you enjoy. Let's get into these players. Again, going to be running a bunch of running backs here to start. Let's go with Devin Singletary. He is 13% rostered right now. Every player we're going to talk about is less than 50% rostered. A couple players I'm going to have at the end are around that 50% mark that I do want to mention in case they are available in your league, but we're going to go off a bunch of guys here that should be available in the vast majority of leagues. So for Singletary, opportunities are rising here. Dameon Pierce, the struggles he's had this season are starting to catch up to him, and it started to rear its ugly head this past week. But on the year, Pierce is averaging just 2.9 yards per carry, and has just one run of 15 plus yards. So we're not getting explosive plays. We're not getting efficiency. So Singletary stepped in with a little bit more of a role this week where he actually had the advantage in snaps 34-21. And Pierce did have a slight advantage in carries 13-12, but Singletary was far more efficient. So you just have these guys going head to head in these opportunities in this specific matchup against a specific team in the Saints. And Singletary averaged 4.8 yards per carry, which is pretty solid against the Saints defense, while Pierce averaged just 2.6. Pierce lost his third down role in short yardage work this week as well. We saw Singletary on the field for a lot of those opportunities, but Pierce had the advantage in goal line work 5-3 this past week, but he was terrible. You saw Singletary kind of run them all the way down the field. I think they ran the ball with him maybe 4 or 5 straight times, got into the red zone, got into goal-to-go situations, gave Pierce the ball, and Pierce lost yardage on, I think, 2 of the 3 back-to-back carries and set the team back there in a goal-to-go situation. So, again, I think that's kind of the straw that broke the camel's back on that type of decision there, utilizing him. And then Singletary actually closed out the game in the fourth quarter with with 9 snaps of the 13 total in that final quarter of the game. So seems like they're going to get him the ball a little bit more. Now the Texans do have a bye week this week, so he's definitely more of an investment in the weeks following, but it could be worth the investment because Carolina is who they get off the bye, and Carolina has been one of the worst teams in the NFL against the run. Actually, probably once the stats are updated, they might be the worst team in fantasy points allowed to running backs because we saw Raheem Mostert have a huge day for the Dolphins this past week. So Singletary, honestly, he might be one of the better long-term type of plays here and the most, I guess, realistic thought that he could be the number one guy here in this offense because of Pierce's struggles. So kind of opening things up and a realistic shot at being able to take over. Next up is Latavius Murray. He's 14% rostered. Man, the Bills don't trust James Cook. Plain and simple, they don't trust him. They don't want to give him the ball in some of these important situations on the field or areas of the field. And it seems like when they're trailing, they don't want to play him. They want to play one of these veterans. And obviously with the Damien Harris injury last night, we're going to see probably a lot more Latavius Murray. He's going to take all of Harris's opportunities and role and give himself potential standalone value moving forward because Murray has a 7-3 advantage over James Cook on inside the 5 rushing attempts this season. He's been their guy, especially recently. Cook, I don't think, has had one inside the 5 carry in at least a few weeks now. And this past week, we saw Murray play all 4 of the goal line snaps against the Giants. So the Cook ran just 2 more routes, so we're getting even closer in routes run, which is really surprising. And they played an even 30-30 split of snaps. Look, I look at this Bills offense, and I see value in 2 things for running backs. It's scoring touchdowns and it's catching passes. And I thought Cook would have a real handle on that role in this offense, and he doesn't. Murray's getting far too involved, and then Murray definitely has a stranglehold on inside the 5 carries and touchdown opportunities. So that is where his value is going to be found in this offense, and Murray's starting to get more and more of those opportunities. Definitely worth an add, a stash on the bench, and potentially someone you might be able to play week in and week out. Now let's get to the San Francisco running back room. The injury to Christian McCaffrey opens up some opportunities here for both Elijah Mitchell, who we're going to have here on the screen for you at 28% rostered, but as well Jordan Mason. CMC leaves the game, like I said, the oblique injury. Mason was the one to get the snaps on the game. He had a 15-7 advantage over Mitchell in snaps, and then actually played a little bit more, quite a bit more than Mitchell once CMC left the game. The thing is Elijah Mitchell has always been the handcuff guy for this offense and even proved value when he was given the number 1 role this past week. This past in seasons prior to CMC's arrival, but he's been nursing this knee injury. He missed the 2 weeks prior, so this could potentially be a a situation where either, and again, this is a lot of guessing here. There's not a lot to go off of. There's the potential of this just being a situation where Mitchell is coming back from the knee injury and they don't want to rush him back, and maybe he wasn't 100%, so they gave Mason a little bit more of that role and didn't want to be running him out there for, 5 to 6 snaps at a time. They were looking for him to spell like he was for McCaffrey, and they played Mason because they knew he was healthier. Or, which I think is less likely, maybe Mitchell has run out of favor with his coaching staff because of how often he's been getting hurt, and Mason's been available, so they want to be rewarding the guy that's been playing, been available, and hasn't looked bad, honestly. He averaged over 5 yards a carry in this game, ran it just fine, but I think it is unlikely we see either one of these guys be the true RB1 of this offense, but it's the 49ers, so if CMC does miss any time, there's going to be value here because this team will run the ball effectively. We saw it with Mitchell before CMC's arrival, so I would slightly lean towards adding Elijah Mitchell, but both of these guys, if CMC misses time, are worth an add. Vikings next, Bengals the following week, so neither of these two teams are too intimidating of matchups for running backs, and really for the Niners, no matchup has really been a problem for them. So both of these guys worth a look. Sticking with the injury report with the next two guys we have, but first it's Craig Reynolds, 2% rostered for the Detroit Lions. Being reported here, was reading it this morning, I'm recording this in the afternoon on Monday, being reported that Dave Montgomery is going to miss some time with his rib injury, and then we also have Jahmyr Gibbs, who has not practiced once in the last 2 weeks. So expecting the guy from going from 10 or 8 straight DNPs to being able to practice in full and play in an NFL game this coming week, I think is far-fetched. Like, I wouldn't expect that to be the case. And then Zonovan Knight is also going to be out for an extended period too, who they did pick up off of waivers, and they did give him some touches when they were dealing with injuries a couple weeks ago. But now that Knight's out of the mix, that kind of puts Craig Reynolds into the spot where he's got a pretty strong handle on this role, and he's been given this role in seasons past too and had some success. The Ravens and the Raiders are the next 2 weeks. Then they have their bye. So I think there's some real potential that maybe Gibbs and Montgomery miss the next 2 weeks, get the bye to give that extra rest. I think Montgomery will definitely be. And then Gibbs, if he misses this week, which I think he will, the team could definitely be thinking about, hey, we give him one more week after this, we get the bye for the extra bonus week of rest, and then he comes back fully healthy. So we could see two weeks of Craig Reynolds. I wouldn't spell that off too quickly, but there could also be an addition through free agency as well for this team. It makes him a pretty touchdown-dependent option, which I think he's capable of. But Detroit is top 5 right now on the season in rushing rate, so they do want to run the football. Reynolds will be that number 1 guy. Look, you've got a day or so, depending on when you're watching this video, to get some more information. But quite frankly, could be a pretty decent add just looking at the situation here in Detroit with these injuries. Our final running back, Zach Evans of the Los Angeles Rams. 0% rostered, going to be available in pretty much every league. Kyren Williams, ankle injury that he suffered on his last rushing attempt of the game, left and did not return. Sean McVay says he thinks he'll be fine. I think this is going to very much be a situation where the Rams don't give us much to go off of, especially until tomorrow night when you have to potentially add this guy. And then they also have Ronnie Rivers, who is out with a PCL sprain. He'll definitely miss some more time. So wide open here. We know how valuable this offense is for running backs. You saw Kyren Williams step in, and he's been one of the best running backs in fantasy football this season. And I don't think it's because Kyren Williams is super talented. I think this is just what this team can do and what McVay can scheme up. So I think Zach Evans is someone that's capable of doing that. He was a big time prospect coming out of college, but didn't transfer from TCU to Ole Miss. And Quinshon Judkins, their freshman last season, was one of the best running backs in college football. So Evans didn't really earn much of a role, and that's why he came in as like a 6th round pick. And a lot of people probably don't know much about him. I do think he'll be the primary runner in the situation that Williams is out. I think Royce Freeman will come up off the practice squad and probably spell him as the primary receiver of their backs. But the running backs for the Rams offense have just a 13% target rate, which is 28th in the NFL. So the value for this offense is running the football, potential of scoring touchdowns as well. And the Rams get the Steelers next. Pretty solid matchup. So again, I'm not going to probably go crazy on the FAAB here because maybe this ankle injury isn't much of a concern for Williams. But the Rams are going to be quiet about this. They're not going to say too much until closer to their game on the weekend. So I think that Evans is worth like a bit of a sneakier ad because I do think some people in your league might not know this because it was a blowout game for the Rams. So maybe not a lot of people are aware that Williams left and could be banged up and could miss some time, and Rivers is also going to be out. So some opportunity here to pick someone up, I think, on the cheap that could really pay off for maybe a week or two. Moving into wide receivers, Wan'Dale Robinson, currently 18% rostered. I've talked about this guy quite a bit. We haven't had a must-add video for a couple weeks now, but love Robinson. His 27.9% target rate is 15 13th amongst wide receivers. He's getting the ball a ton when he's on the field. He's gotten 6+ targets in 3 straight games now because he kind of got eased into the offense in week 1 because he's coming back from the torn ACL, and then now he's kind of being unleashed here because Paris Campbell, who was running the slot before Wan'Dale's arrival, has been phased out of this offense. His snaps have come down each and every week. To this past week against the Bills on Sunday night, Paris Campbell didn't run a single route in this game. He just played special team snaps. So Robinson is their guy in the slot. He's been getting significant volume. If you're in a half PPR standard league, Wan'Dale's not worth an ad. And if you're in a standard league, definitely not worth an ad. In a half PPR league, will be more matchup dependent, but in a full PPR league, I think he's going to be a guy that'll consistently get you 5 to 6 catches every week. Could get you more in some good matchup weeks, because this past week we saw him with Campbell out take that uptick to 8 targets in this one and then put together some receiving yards. He's a guy that doesn't get a lot of downfield looks. His average depth to target is just 3.4 yards. So they get him the ball in short areas of the field, ask him to make plays after the catch. He's going to get healthier and healthier as the weeks go on. He's a talented player. I really liked him coming out of college at Kentucky. The ACL injury really derailed his season last year. He's looking to get back on track, and honestly, he looks like the number 1 option in this Giants offense. Moving to a player a lot more highly rostered, Rashee Rice. He's 45% rostered right now, so still available in 55% of leagues. I really want to remind you guys, because we talked about him before, he's getting the ball a ton. 30.3% target rate on the season, top 5 amongst wide receivers. And now we've got a situation here that's really going to benefit him. Fortunately for Justin Watson, he's going to be out for an extended period with an elbow injury. And the immediate result of that was Rashee Rice running the most routes of his entire career in the NFL. Obviously a rookie, so not a huge sample size, but he's 3rd on the team in routes run, tied with Sky Moore, only trailing MVS and Travis Kelce. It's exactly what we want to see here, because Rice is a player who they've been running a lot of his routes from the slot. That's where Watson and Moore had kind of been getting some playing time too. So there's one less guy for him to compete with. I think now he's going to get on the field and put together this target share into a bigger sample size and really be able to produce. I think he has the best chance to be an actual viable fantasy option for this Chiefs team beyond Travis Kelce in the receiving game, because the slot has been that place for production, the Chiefs offense. Obviously, we've seen it with Kelce. Even when Juju was with the team last year, a lot of his targets, and he had over 100 on the year, came from the slot. The Chargers, the Broncos, and the Dolphins are up the next 3 weeks. Those are excellent matchups, and if he's got one less guy in competition for those routes, Rice could really produce for you. So I'm really excited here with the opportunity that he's getting to potentially become an elite fantasy asset. I think if he's a guy still available in your wire, he's probably, if you're not desperate at the running back position, like the number 1 ad for me on the week. Finally, we move to tight end, Michael Mayer. He is 5% rostered coming off a big week against the Patriots, and it's very easy to explain how this came together and why you should be adding him. So throughout the first 5 weeks of the season, he was largely splitting his snaps with Austin Hooper, and then more specifically, in 11 personnel when they didn't have 2 tight ends on the field, he wasn't the guy. He was running just he was on the field for just 32.3% of 11 personnel formations. That means Austin Hooper was on the field, he was off of it a lot of the time. But this week, major flip, and it majorly paid off for the Raiders offensively. Mayer went from that 32% snaps in 11 personnel to over 72%. So very clear what they wanted to do here. They basically flipped the roles between Mayer and Hooper, and what Mayer turned that into was 5 receptions on 6 targets for 75 yards. That 75 receiving yards led the team actually this past week. So there's a few caveats to this. Obviously, Devontae Adams is banged up, did play in the game, but nowhere near 100%. When he is back, can we see all 3 of these guys, both Mayer, Adams, and Myers, all contribute and produce at once and be relevant and quality assets for your fantasy team? I'm not so sure, especially with the Jimmy G injury that makes things a little bit more murky. McDaniels did say it's not as serious as they thought, but they won't comment on what kind of timeline we should be expecting. So maybe he misses this week, maybe he doesn't at all. But again, it's early in the week, so it's tough to get a feel for that. But to be completely fair, I mean, the Raiders don't have much of a third wide receiver for competition, like a Hunter Renfrow, DeAndre Carter, Trey Tucker. They haven't really been in the mix whatsoever this season. We have the Bears, Lions, and Giants next. Not a bad schedule to go to for tight ends. So Mayer's definitely worth that ad, just because, again, you see that flip. He's a talented player. Has some draft capital backing him as well. The Raiders definitely are motivated to see him produce. So I do think Mayer's the best tight end off the wire this week. Quickly, before we go, I want to mention 3 players here that are right around that 50% mark that we've talked about maybe in the past, or I just want to reiterate. Roschon Johnson, Justin Fields, very unlikely to play this coming week. That means you're going to see the Bears run the ball a ton. a ton. So you should definitely add Roschon Johnson because he's probably going to come back from that concussion. Down to Foreman. Both of these guys are going to be worth it. The rushing volume should be super, super high for this Bears team without Fields because the quarterback coming to step in has no NFL experience. Jackson Smith-Njigba is below that 50% mark. DK Metcalf went down with a hip injury. That is something to pay attention to. The direct result of that was seeing JSN getting more downfield targets. And then Tajay Spears is still below the 50% mark. If he's available, number one out on the week. If Malik Willis is in at quarterback, this offense will be running the ball on probably 60% of plays. And Spears might have standalone value even with Henry obviously healthy and playing. Spears has been fantastic this season. I do think, again, if no Tannehill, he's going to be someone that might even be startable in any type of matchup because of volume for this team offensively, because Malik Willis cannot be trusted. My God, he was terrible on Sunday morning. Okay, those are some of my favorite must-add players heading into week 7. Guys, again, if you enjoyed today's video, I'd really, really appreciate if you hit that like button for me. Let me know that you enjoyed this content. If there's any players I missed, if you're looking for quarterbacks to stream or maybe a tight end, another tight end that might be available, whatever it might be, happy to answer those comments down below. So definitely drop them there. If you have any, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.